Call this.
Wait.
Oh, not yet.
Make sure this goes through. All right, you're good.
Okay, we're gonna call this meeting to order. It's 7 p.m. Roll call, please, Mr. Wiggins.
Counselor Jocelyn Jones.
Here.
Counselor Lonnie Jones.
Here.
Counselor Dillard.
Here.
Counselor Burton.
Here.
Counselor Baird, unexcused for now. And Commissioner Davenport.
Yes, sir.
All right, you do have a quorum.
All right, we'll move into the minutes from February. Have you read and or choose to accept? I'll take a motion on that.
I move we accept the minutes from February.
Okay, Jocelyn made a motion. Anybody second that?
I guess I'll second it.
Accepted as is. Didn't see any corrections. Good to go. Don't have any old business, so that'll move us into our new business. The first one on the list here is V-21-01 for Falk. Time is 7:01 p.m. I'm going to open the hearing. All right, this is again just a quasi judicial hearing. Does any planning commission member have any ex parte contact or conflict of interest? I think we all know that Dennis owns the gas station, so
I think we all buy gas.
we all buy gas then. Nobody has any bias or anything?
No.
No, okay. Mr. Williams, you want to give us a staff report on that?
Sure. So I got an application from Mr. Falk on February 1st, asking the city to vacate some right of way along the front of his property. We did issue public notice to the properties around him and as well as postage. He's requesting approximately 10 feet of right of way along the Main Street boundary of his property. It affects all 99 feet of Main Street, and you can refer to my exhibit back in the back. I have a drawing. And this came to me via ODOT because as they're working on the handicap access and they're working on getting their right of way squared away there for all the handicap things, they discovered that from we don't know when, where, way back when, for some reason, the street there, the city had this excess right of way that was, maybe more in preparation of a 80-foot right of way instead of a 60-foot right of way. So what we noted there is, if you look at it on that map on Schedule A, we're looking to get rid of, and it's like it has it there 9.27 feet to 9.33 feet. It's all drawn out. It hasn't been surveyed, and we'd be giving up that right of way to Mr. Falk. Right now, as it sits, basically, in all technicality, he wouldn't be able to use the one side of his pumps because people would be parking in the right of way to do so. His signs and his dinosaur and all that are in actually City of Union right of way. Now, one thing I want to caveat on that is the street is still owned by the City of Union, but the ODOT falls within the right of way as an overlay to that. So ODOT owns the street, but they don't own the ground below the City of Union. That's why we have to grant the right of way in order for him to continue using his awning, which would protrude out, and leave his sign where it is, or and I think he wouldn't. I think he still has to move the dinosaur because it's kind of still in the project area, but he's working on that. Anyway, so that's kind of the history behind it. And I had some extensive talks with ODOT with it, and I believe that there's no plans from ODOT to widen the highway. There's no plans from the city to ever widen the highway that we know of. And the way that road works is, we only have that little bit right there. So there's really no reason to you know, you'd have a road that just kind of went like that, it wouldn't look good, so. So our zoning ordinance does never, go over, anything with vacates, so we follow the state statute. And, with that, we have to look at our comprehensive land use plan. And basically, when vacating, city property, we just we gotta look, does it have any other public purpose? You know, could this 10 feet be used for a park? Can it be used for something else that it would behoove the city other than a street? Or is it best just to allow it to go to the landowner? So those are the questions we have to answer, is whether there is any other public purpose that it would serve better than as to a private landowner. And that's basically for your decision tonight, to identify anything to go before council if there is anything for that. Vacating the right of way is not going to affect any of our water or sewer lines. They would still maintain in our right of way that we currently have. So if we vacated this portion, it's not going to ruin anything we have that we already have in the ground. Staff believes that by giving up this right of way, it would make the land more contiguous to what surrounds it. We keep it, you know, in a straight line. It removes the hardship of the current property owner abutting the right of way by allowing him to leave his awning, leave his Sinclair sign up. If we do vacate it, you know, we're just proposing we vacate as the drawing depicts in the appendix. And that the property owner is just going to incur all the costs to file and record the vacate. So with the county, once it's all said and done, he'll have to file that, and that'll be his cost to do so. So that's all we have to do it. Again, the public commission or the planning commission needs to draft a recommendation to the council of, you know, yay or nay, and if they believe there's any other public use to the ground other than what is being stated from the applicant. So that's all I got.
All right, thank you. At this time, applicant, would you like to make a presentation? State your name and
Yep.
all that. We've done it.
Dennis Fall, Folks Mini Mart, 363 North Main. I've always known my property line was up close to my island, and I was under the impression that the state had taken it years and years ago. And I don't know if anybody's ever looked down Main Street of Union. It does this all the way down. It's in, it's out, because my block is in. The next block with that retaining wall is pretty close to be where the property line is. It doesn't go clear into their yard 10 feet like it does mine. So I actually approached Ace Clark with ODOT because I was looking at replacing the canopy. We're planning on doing tank replacement for all of our tanks because they're of age. Yeah, thanks. So we were kind of running into a little setback spacing with that. And so I talked to him about that. Hey, you know, what do we need to do on this? And then he's actually brought up the survey crew and surveyed it for us and found out that they didn't even know it either. They thought they did too. That's what was brought up. And we don't know what year this was ever even done. Did you ever find anything, Doug?
We believe that this was from the original plat back when it was that subdivision was originally platted back in early 1900s.
Okay, yeah. At one time, the previous building that was there sat on that. The tanks were buried in that right away. So the only proposal, like I said, I have is that we are going to replace the tanks. We are going to replace all the concrete to the sidewalk. With a nice steady grade instead of, I don't know if anybody's ever drove in there fast, you'll about get bucked out of your car. But that's multiple different projects happening. So like I said, that's all I have is that, you know, we're gonna fix it, we're gonna make it look better than it is. But like I said, I don't know why it's ever been set back the way it has been. And nothing's ever been brought up before. I mean, installed the canopy in 1991, did all the work then, and nothing was ever brought up. Any questions for me?
I wonder if the taxes are retroactive back to the 1900s.
So is the maintenance on it.
Oh, there you go.
Taxes will be only retroactive. The exchange happens. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Okay, at this time, are there any testimonies here in favor or written or on Facebook or anything that you have?
I have no comments.
And we've had no letters or anything. We've had a couple people come in and ask questions, to which I think they were just confused of why this was happening. And, once we explained it to them, they didn't have any other questions. So most of it was just questions about the project and why.
Okay.
But nobody for, nobody against.
Okay, so any testimonies in opposition here? Take the silence as a no. All right, so I'll close this hearing at 7:11 PM for deliberation. So planning commission, deliberate. Make sure we all understand that this is just we're gonna give our recommendation, passing this along to city council. So we're not actually, that's our decision that we're making tonight. We're not making the decision whether to vacate or not for him.
Looks like a common sense thing that probably just needs to done, almost a technicality, but I don't see a downside to it.
It sounds like the only question is there something else someone would want to do with that? And who would, it doesn't even seem to be reasonable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all looked down I think the bridge, if I'm right too, doesn't, like the bridge and those other properties are neck down way further than.
Mhm.
Yeah, the drugstore property.
Yeah.
Well, the very first plotting, so it's really tight.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason. It's probably just a due diligence thing here to make sure nothing pops up, but. So if that's the case, if you guys think it wise, then somebody can make a motion
To
to
support it or.
support with probably including these things. I think it's a good idea just to state that the vacation is what has been platted, and then any expenses for recording is to be the owners, so. That's what staff put in there anyways.
I move we should accept the staff recommendation with the qualifiers that are given.
Okay, got a motion? Anybody want to second that? Mr. Baird will second that.
And then I'm just gonna add on that you guys believe there is no greater use for that 10-foot by 100-foot section. I mean.
In the location that it's at, I think we're all in agreement that it just makes sense that,
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
What
just
do you
what I
wanna do
gotta
with
pass on.
that?
I don't see another public use for it.
not anywhere, yeah. I
A
don't-
new 10-foot city park.
Swing set time.
That wouldn't even match a minimum lot size.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, then you want to go to
Wanna take
the vote on that?
Yeah. Commissioner Jocelyn Jones,
In favor.
Lonnie Jones,
Yeah.
Commissioner Dillard,
Yep.
Commissioner Burton,
Yes.
Commissioner Baird.
Yes.
Motion passes with 5.
Okay, that-
Move that on to council and that'll be for April's council meeting.
Okay, thank you. That'll close that. I'm gonna roll in. If you guys are here for Dennis's, if you guys want to stay, that's fine. If you don't need to, we're gonna go into the next order of business here. It's a CUP 21-02 for Huck. We're gonna open that at 7:14 PM. This is, again, a quasi judicial hearing. Let me get to my. Okay, does anybody, again, does the planning commission have any bias or ex parte contact with this one that we know of?
No.
No.
Okay. Mr. Woods, would you give us the staff report on that one?
Yes, so on February 4th, I received an application from the property owners, or the now property owners of Huck. for the Historic Union Community Hall, which is the old Methodist church. As you know, that is a full half block going from Main Street back to College Street along the north side of that block, along Delta. It was zoned public facilities, and within a public facilities, you can run a Methodist church. That's what they did, and they had the parsonage there for the living quarters for the priest. So under land use law, a public facility zone, use as a church is an outright thing, is good, but they need a conditional use if the building is going to be used as a public service provided by a nonprofit organization. So HUC is a nonprofit organization, and in order to use the building to do the services they wish to do, which are public services, they have to get a conditional use to continue to use the building under the same zoning that they have now. Additionally, they're looking for permission to rent the parsonage in the back for a regular residential rental. In a public facility zone, that would take a conditional use permit in order to allow them to rent that out as a residential in a public facility zone. So staff finding, just a second, I'm getting there. So their plan is to use the facility as a public service under the guise of a community center. The lot does have a parsonage though that has allowed residential living prior to HUC's purchase of the property, which was for the pastor, the priest of the church. There is designated parking along Delta Street for the proposed community center along the right of way. Notices were issued, and as they should be, and city services are not hindered or impacted by this business use. The only thing I gotta say on that is, there's been that parsonage is surrounded by residential all around it, so using it as a residence, I don't think is a problem within that zone. It's one thing if it was maybe in the middle of a big business district with businesses surrounding it, but I mean, you got homes used all around it. Across the street, you guys just approved a conditional use about, I think a year ago roughly, for Airbnb right across the street. So it fits what's going on in the area. The staff recommendation is that if it hasn't already, the group should have 2 utility fees. I did look into that after I wrote this report, and they do have 2 utility fees, one for the church and one for the home. Other than that, that's all I have.
Okay. At this time, is there a representative for testimony or application? Just state your name and maybe how you're affiliated.
My name is Tara Richter, and I'm the president of the board of the Friends of Historic Union Community Hall. And then we have Lalon Hall and Geneva Williams also on the board. Do you guys have any questions? Basically, we're trying to do, the community hall itself will be a chapel in the front for events and whatever, which is what it's been for a long time, as well as the hall for the fellowship hall, which is where a lot of people do the senior meals. We're working with CHD on bringing in some services, not specific to what those services will be at this point. We just signed the papers on last month, as of yesterday, or as of tomorrow. But we have worked with Community Connections on maybe getting some food pantry, community meals, CHD possibly for some support groups and that type of thing. As well as we'd like to do that same area, do small virtual meetings So we agreed to bringing people into town for different meetings, or people that are actually working from home, give them an opportunity, as well as a resource center. So people that don't have internet and don't have a way to access internet or computers will have a resource center in there. As far as the house is concerned, that is our main income. That is what is making it possible for us to actually pay for this building. The rent from that will basically pay all of our overhead. So it's, and I believe, didn't they rent the house out for the?
Yeah, it's been rented for a long time.
I can
speak to that.
Okay, come on up.
Yeah, the fact of it being the parsonage is just what it was labeled long ago, and it has been rented out as a residence more years than it was ever used for a parsonage. A lot of times the minister had their own home, like some of the last ones did. So, and actually, Brookshire was going to verify with me about the fact that when he was a boy, in 1976, his family moved and they needed a place to live, and he lived in the parsonage. So I know that it's been rented many times since it was first built about 1895. So, was there anything else significant about that? And we're also, we have furnace work to be done, and we're gonna get it completely inspected and updated with a new furnace and make it a better rental than it has been for quite a few years.
So over the past year, we've had over 400 signatures of support for the community. We raised over $30,000 to purchase this building. So we have a lot of community support. This is just the last step to get the program started and start reaching out to the resources that are available. And our goal is not just to serve Union, but to serve the greater Union South County area.
Any questions?
I wanted to speak up.
I just want to know before I sit down.
Okay, the church building was 30 years old when I was born, so that tells you. And all my life, there have been two stately churches on Main Street. The LDS church was built when I was a baby. And it always been a welcoming thing. When you come back to Union, you always felt safe, and we didn't worry about zones in the previous times. Those buildings were there and they were used appropriately. And also, when you look at Main Street of Union, that used to be Highway 30. And anyone came, State Highway 30, anyone coming from Portland, going to Boise, come right through down Main Street. And so it's kind of sort of, and the buses stop here. So to think that the church couldn't be used as a stately building, no matter what its purpose, it's still a stately church building. It will always be the old Methodist church. I'm sorry. So anyway, I started keeping books for the Methodist Church in 2007, and it was very obvious that the congregation was diminishing and the history of the church was really becoming sad. And so when the conference decided in 2019 to close the church and no longer operate in Union, there were some people that were pretty interested, some of them here in the building now, and a few others, that just tried to really start beating the bushes to see how in the world we could save that wonderful building. And believe it or not, as you can see, this is the final step to it, being able to do all the things that Tara was telling you about. We've got plans for a community center, to have services in Union so you don't have to get in your car and go to Grand to Walmart to copy your pictures and so forth. You don't have to go to Grand to get your blood pressure taken, because the clinic here you have to have an appointment for. So all those things are just so dear to all our hearts. And We didn't used to have a zone, so I don't think it mattered what it was zoned when those two buildings were built. And like Geneva said, the parsonage, I've been in the book since 2007, and it's been a rental ever since then, so that's what I was established. So basically, our mission is to try to continue to preserve the building and provide services to you. And I respectfully request that this permit, conditional permit be. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other testimonies in favor? Do we have any on the internet or anything? Testimonies in opposition? Was that a no? I didn't. No, okay. All right, well, at this time then I'll close the hearing at 7:26 PM for commission deliberation.
Doug, I have a question. Why would we do a conditional use permit? Because it seems like whenever we do those have to be reapproved every year. Why would
They don't have to be.
Well, they don't have to be, so we can make a clause that says this is good for 5
Usually,
years and.
yeah, like some of the conditional use permits we do, like putting trailers and living in trailers, we put expirations on because you don't obviously want that going on forever.
Mhm.
Something like this, you're looking at, it's gonna stay with these owners. So you have to get a new conditional use permit for every new owner. If they sell the building or do something, then the next owners would have to go and do the same thing.
All right.
So we could say that then on it.
We could make the conditional use for as long as the Huck owns the building and then we'll, okay, perfect.
So, and then I guess I had some thoughts on that, and maybe you guys can help feed into that. If this becomes, whatever this becomes, I know that that's a tight residential zone, depending on parking seems to be the issue around that area. So with that in mind, when I was thinking about the conditional use, it seems that usually it's based on the neighborhood feedback on how this thing goes. So if we were to do that and it stayed with the life of the owning and then, or the owner, then there was, an extreme amount of traffic and constant, hassle, then that comes back on the city by way of, hey, they're parking in my spots and we have these issues, and that could create more issue down the road if it becomes and turns into something that's that. And that's what I'm hearing. It sounds like it's a place that may have medical or like blood pressure things. I didn't quite understand that, but it sounds like it could have a lot of revolving, and maybe it would help.
It's been, like Luan was saying, it's been the senior meals, it's been a lot of those programs already.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the community around, or the residents around it are pretty familiar with that. So I don't think there's gonna be a major influx unless there was an event at night or something like that. And then we can work with maybe the other church for parking or something like that, where we can kind of plan parking or maybe that type of thing. But I don't think there's gonna be many opportunities where we just kind of take over. One of the things that we see over there a lot of times is when the neighbors across the street on Delta, sometimes they park on the church's side versus the other way around. And then there is parking all on Main Street, there's parking all the way up Delta, and then there's parking on College as well. So there's quite a bit of parking that just goes around, encompasses that property. So there is quite a bit. And then if there was any overflow, we would probably work with the Mormon church or something like that on a special event or something.
Have you guys done any estimations on like spots or things or gathering of people quantity wise? Have you thought about that or thought through any of those situations?
I've been here one time, and when my grandpa's funeral was there, it filled the whole building up. It didn't seem like there was plenty of parking between on the main road and all around. I've never heard of a complaint of parking for that church. All I know is we had 400 signatures of local residents supporting this project.
Sure.
So I'm not too concerned about the parking necessarily, just because I think we can work with either the neighbors or the other church across the street if there was a large event. Say we did a theater program or something like that, but I think that would be more welcome than anything, because it'd be a special opportunity for the community.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And I just say that not, it sounds because like you do have a lot of support, so it could take off. And from a city aspect, I'm thinking that we should consider that just because of that conditional use would go with you guys if you're there for the next 20 years and it gets so busy that the neighborhood around it is then causing the city more complaint, which that's where they'll go. And then I'm just trying to think through some of the future based on what you're saying and the excitement and involvement in it. So,
yeah.
And I'm just talking it out so we can kind of think through, especially that aspect of the conditional use permit, because that's how they're designed. You know, if we do decide that it goes with you and you guys are there for a long period of time and this thing grows, we just need to be able to look down the road a little bit and see how that's the ebbs and flows of that. Because we can see that church across the road, I mean, they've got a giant parking lot, that's been considered into some of their function things. I drive by it a lot and I see and I wonder how the parking's gonna work, and if the neighbors are already parking over there, is it because are they just parking over there? So there's always gonna be some, I know just from experience, there's always parking issues, and it's just something for us to think through by way of conditional use permit, because that can be stated that if it comes back in 3, 5, 10 years or whatever, we can actually revisit that, and then that can be again another issue that's taken up here that could be resolved. So.
Yeah, and I think that's something that can be resolved, especially if there's that bed and breakfast across the street on Main and Delta, and a lot of times they'll park. Hi, I saw you on the side of my building. I think they park over on our side, but we're only going to have certain hours of the day or the evening that we're going to do events. I don't see it ever being a full-time big thing.
Okay. And that's, I'm just curious.
Like we did on that bed and breakfast, we put a condition that she had to keep the parking on her side of the street or off the street on her own property. You could do little things like that, well, for the owners of the house, you can put a condition on with the conditional use that they have to use off-street parking for the house. You can do those types of things, and maybe that eases some parking on the street by them there's a driveway on the back side of the house, maybe that they have to allocate a couple of those spots for their renters or something to ease parking on the street. But that's for you guys to consider. As with all conditional use permits, if a lot of them are handled on a complaint basis. If the complaints come in and we can't get them resolved, they're going to come back before the planning commission for review, and then at that time they could be revoked. So they're going to work with you because they don't want to lose their conditional use permit. So
right there, Doug, that's what I'm hearing. So if the life goes with them, then I'm hearing is if it does become an issue, then what is that process? You get so many complaints.
The city takes complaints and we'll try to work with them. Let's say 10 years down the line, the city's taking a bunch of complaints on parking and it's under that conditional use permit. That's why they're operating. And they don't want to work with us. And they, essentially tell you to pack sand or whatever. Then we just say, okay, well, we'll go back before the planning commission and we'll review your conditional use permit because of, you're not working in the area. You got to work with people around you, and that you can hold. It holds weight for the commission, and then obviously they don't want that, so they're going to work the best they can and try to come at a solution before it ever comes back that way. You would hope.
Okay, so it sounds like in this situation, if we were to make it go with the life of it, then that's the issue I was getting at. That is going to be kind of hand in hand down the road.
Any conditional use permit can be handled as a complaint basis. That if it can't be resolved with city staff and city, then it would go back before the planning commission for review.
Okay.
Of course, if you reviewed and denied, they can always appeal again to the city council and so forth as it goes down.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I just asked this, and I think we need to think about it because it sounds like a good thing for the community, and it just trying to, I think part of our job is to consider the city's limited capacity, what they can handle. And so
Well, if you look at a lot of their, I mean, with what they're proposing that they're gonna be doing, I've seen a lot of their proposals, stuff they wanna do, it's not gonna be a lot of people staying for long periods of time.
Okay.
We're talking an hour or two for the most part, coming in, going like to eat a meal and then go, or, you know, maybe if there's a program that might last 3 hours, maybe you might have
Okay.
some parking there, but, you know, it's really, a lot of it is temporary parking. And is it equivalent to what's at the LDS church? No, but they don't have the capacity of the LDS church either.
inside, yeah, that's what I guess the question is, what does it look inside there? What is the capacity?
It's, I mean, probably 50 at one time, maybe a
Oh,
little bit more if we open up all the doors and roll up all the windows.
It has a very large capacity, we know from previous funerals and gatherings. But the reason I got back up is the church is used to pretty good crowds in the neighborhood too. And the neighbors didn't write in and say they'll take all our parking holes.
Sure.
So we had the food bank there for many, many years, along with the senior meals and a lot of functions, Boy Scouts, you name it. There's been a lot of things we did. I started being active in that church in 1976. I was there to serve the very first senior meal that was ever in Union. So I think we police ourselves pretty good, and we angle park, and that gives you way more parking. We have plenty of space for the whole vehicle, and also on College.
And there's 2 handicap parking spots already.
And on Main Street, people walk on Main Street.
Yeah, no, that's the only thought I had is, thank you, ladies. Yeah. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or questions, concerns?
I lived on the North College, right behind the church for 9 years, and yeah, saw a lot of funerals and the senior meal, nothing. I
Nothing
never
super.
saw any problems with what went on there. It didn't seem like there was any issue parking wise.
And I have to say, I am a senior, and I have gone to senior meals, and there's always been a parking spot.
I mean, that's really the only foreseeable thing I can see with any type of event center that would be an issue.
Which is it's good.
Yeah. No, I think it's good for communities and everything else, so.
But it's good that you like parking, that is important.
Well, and it just matters, so if we make the motion, it sounds like the best thing to do then would be to, as it says here, I think for, as long as the property is managed and owned by the HUC, is that what it is? Yeah. Hutch, is it called? Hutch?
Huck.
HUC, okay.
Franklin Historic Union Community Hall.
Okay, HUC, we'll call it HUC. So that would be then just to maybe make that motion inside that to stipulate that it stays with them for the life of, unless that entity changes, something like that.
Mhm.
Any motions or any questions, or what do you want to do?
I would make a motion every time I do, I get it wrong, so help me out. I make a motion that we accept HUC on the conditional use permit as long as they're keeping it and it's used for the manner that they are wanting it to be. Is that right? I should read that. The planning commission moves forward to allow the conditional use permit. The following conditions are staff recommendations. If the planning commission moves
That's the
forward
key word.
to allow with the conditional use permit, the following recommendations are referred for consideration. If not already, the group should have 2 utility fees per property, which they do, I guess, given the community center and the residential home are being used for completely separate types of service, not contingent of the other. I'll second that
She said that
motion.
really well.
Yeah, it's only way to get it right.
So Lonnie, you second that?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so yeah. I'm gonna go to a vote here on this now. All right.
Commissioner Jocelyn Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Lonnie Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Diller,
Yes.
Commissioner Burton,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey.
Yes.
Motion passes with 5.
All right, that ends that one. Congratulations. Look, you guys. Yeah, so at this time, we have an upcoming, so number 5 on the list here is public comments. Does anybody have any public comment or anything they'd like to share?
Excuse us, we'll run away.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any comments on the internet or anything?
No.
Okay, so
Are we short of a member again, or we got one absent?
are we short of planning?
We are
Number
short.
one.
We got tabs up, trying to find them.
Okay,
You know somebody? Recommend them?
okay. My right-hand man's here, so I'm good.
I know he's so important, his whole word is in capital letters, his whole name.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna need to make a public comment on this. How does that?
Discuss places.
I know, exactly. So number 6 on the list here is, we have an upcoming meeting for Daggett minor partition.
I'll just let you know, I don't believe we're gonna have that, been looking into that. That ground has already been semi-partitioned. They're called ghost partitions. So they own the whole block.
Mhm.
And if they go in and follow the petition lines that are already there, they don't need to file a partition. So I think the more I've been looking into it, it's gonna be more on their side to make it how they want, as long as the current residence meets all the setbacks and everything, they're gonna be fine. And with what I've seen that they're proposing to do, I don't think it's gonna be a problem. I just haven't seen a final on it. But it's kind of in their court to do what they need to do through some title work and real estate law to take care of what they want to do. And it shouldn't even come before us, so.
Because it's already been plotted. And I know Danny and I've talked to him
Yes.
a little bit about that. It seems like, and maybe that's a public comment thing here that I can make, is that it seems like there is a little bit of unknown just in the past on the way we've handled those. Because I have seen it on the map. Like, I think my lot down here is the same way where the Bronson building is. It actually has
So
shown.
those are all, so like by legal right, if you have, let's say, a little, like a section there, you could go sell that right now without doing anything and sell that portion of property, right?
Right.
So the only thing you run into is that the city, you have to make sure it meets the minimum standards of the city, which are 7,500 square feet. So 5,500 wouldn't. But if you have 100 by 100, you could sell off 100 by 100 or a 75 by 100.
Right.
As long as those lines, now, if you're gonna do anything that deviates beyond those dotted lines, we call them the ghost lines or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you have to do a minor partition.
Right.
So, or a petition, such.
Right. Okay.
So, and it looks like they're trying to follow the lines, and if they do, they should be
Just by way of legal recording and things like that.
legal recording and drawing up the deeds for because they're taking one deed and they're gonna be splitting it into 3 deeds.
Right.
And that's all legal stuff.
Right. That we don't have to
That we
touch.
don't do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, some things come into light on that.
Yeah, it's been a learning process for us because I actually had one other that came to me the same week they did.
Oh, be darned.
And so, we're looking at the same thing, and it's just it's a legal thing. So
Okay.
it's not on us, it's on them.
All right. Anything or other things? All right. I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 7:44 PM.
Can you hit that harder?
Well, I did because nobody was in here for once. So I wanted to see if it held up. It held up.
Oh, there it is.
You did record.
Here's
Let me
one.
sit in the middle seat. That's
I always forget to say, oh.
I got it.
How long have we been down that position?
Since